In a quiet suburban town, Clara Montgomery, a respected principal, finds herself at the center of a fierce battle, not just for her career, but for her heart. As whispers of disapproval echo through the halls of Crestview Elementary, she grapples with the fallout from her unexpected romance with Marcus, the school's janitor. When her colleagues and even her own family launch a campaign to dismantle her authority over their interracial relationship, Clara must summon all her courage to defy the prejudice surrounding her. In a world where love is often seen through the lens of societal expectations, will Clara be able to stand firm against the tide of judgment, or will her pursuit of happiness cost her everything? Clara Montgomery stood at the front of the bustling school hallway, her heart pounding as she watched students rush to their classes. As the principal of Crestview Elementary, she felt a sense of pride in the vibrant environment she helped cultivate, but it came with a constant undercurrent of pressure. At 40, Clara was determined to prove herself in a role often scrutinized, especially as a woman in leadership. "Clara, you have a moment?" her colleague, Lisa, called out, breaking Clara's thoughts. Lisa approached with an air of urgency, her voice lowered as she glanced around. "I wanted to talk about the spring gala." "Sure, what's up?" Clara replied, forcing a smile despite the tightness in her chest. Lisa leaned in, lowering her voice even further. "You know, I've heard some rumors about you spending time with the janitor, Marcus. You should be careful." Clara's stomach dropped at the mention of Marcus. They had shared some meaningful conversations during after-school events, and Clara had found herself drawn to him, not just for his hard-working nature, but for the kindness he showed to everyone around him. He had a way of connecting with the students that left a lasting impression. "What do you mean?" Clara asked, feigning ignorance, though a flicker of apprehension crept into her mind. "You know how people talk," Lisa continued, her tone conspiratorial. "A principal dating a janitor? Just be careful with who you associate with. It could reflect poorly on you." "I'm sure it won't," Clara replied, her voice steady, but inside, she felt a knot forming. She had never considered what others thought of her relationship with Marcus. To her, it was about genuine connection, not social standing. As Lisa walked away, Clara's thoughts turned to Marcus. She couldn't deny the chemistry that sparked between them. He was intelligent, articulate, and had an infectious laugh that echoed through the halls long after he had left. Clara tried to push aside her worries, but she couldn't shake the feeling that their budding relationship would attract unwarranted attention. As she made her way to her office, she spotted Marcus cleaning up after lunch. He looked up, his face lighting up with a smile that made her heart skip a beat. "Hey, Ms. Montgomery, how's your day going?" he asked, his voice warm and inviting. "It's going well, Marcus. Just trying to keep up with everything," Clara replied, feeling the weight of the world lift a little with his presence. "I've got to say, the kids are really responding to the new reading program you implemented. It's great to see them so engaged," he said, glancing around the hall with pride. "Thank you. That means a lot coming from you," Clara responded, her smile genuine. "I couldn't do it without your support." They exchanged small talk, laughter punctuating the air, and for a moment, Clara forgot about the doubts and judgments that loomed over her. But as she walked away, the gnawing sense of anxiety returned. She couldn't ignore the whispers that were sure to follow, especially in a community where conformity was the norm. That evening, Clara confided in her best friend, Sarah, during their regular dinner date. Over plates of pasta, Clara took a deep breath. "I think I might be developing feelings for Marcus." Sarah paused, her fork hovering above her plate. "Clara, you know how people are going to react, right? He's a janitor, and you're the principal. That's going to raise eyebrows. Why does that matter? He's good at his job, and he treats the kids well," Clara replied, her voice rising slightly. "Why should I care what anyone thinks? Because people will talk. You're in a position of power. It's not just about you," Sarah said, her tone cautious but firm. "What about your reputation?" I'm tired of worrying about my reputation, Clara shot back, frustration bubbling to the surface. I'm not looking for approval. I just want to be happy. Sarah sighed, her eyes softening. I just want you to be careful. You know how people are. They can be cruel. As Clara drove home that night, Sarah's words echoed in her mind. The weight of expectations pressed down on her shoulders, but amidst the turmoil, one thought lingered: perhaps it was time to follow her heart, regardless of the potential fallout. But as the sun set on Crestview Elementary, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, not just for her career, but for the love that was blossoming in the most unexpected of places. The following weeks at Crestview Elementary were a whirlwind of activity, with the spring gala looming closer. Clara found herself spending more time with Marcus, sharing late evenings in the nearly empty hallways, their laughter echoing in the quiet. But with each stolen moment, the whispers among her colleagues grew louder, an insidious undercurrent that threatened to drown her newfound happiness. One afternoon, during a staff meeting, Clara sat at the head of the table, her colleagues surrounding her. As the discussion shifted towards upcoming school events, she could feel the tension in the air, the subtle glances exchanged between her fellow teachers. I heard the janitor's been hanging around more often, Tom, a fellow teacher said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Maybe we should put him on the guest list for the gala. It'll make for quite the spectacle. Laughter erupted around the table, and Clara felt her face flush with anger. That's not appropriate, Tom, she interjected, her voice firm. Marcus works hard, and he deserves respect like everyone else here. Oh, come on, Clara, Lisa chimed in, a smirk on her face. You have to admit, it looks a bit unprofessional, doesn't it? A principal dating a janitor. What kind of example does that set for the students? Clara's heart raced as she held her ground. It sets an example of love and acceptance, regardless of someone's job or background. We should be promoting diversity, not tearing it down. The atmosphere in the room shifted, but Clara could feel the weight of their disapproval pressing down on her. The meeting ended, but the tension lingered, a dark cloud hanging over her. Later that day, Clara found Marcus cleaning up after lunch. As she approached him, she could see the weariness etched on his face, a reflection of the long hours he put in. Hey, Marcus, can we talk? She asked, her voice softening. Sure, Ms. Montgomery. Everything okay? He replied, looking up with concern. I've been hearing some comments from the staff. They're not exactly supportive of our friendship, Clara admitted, feeling vulnerable. Marcus sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. I figured as much. People can be narrow-minded. I just don't want you to get hurt over this. I'm not worried about myself, but I am worried about you. They're making it sound like it's a problem for the school, she said, her brow furrowing. Don't let them get to you. You know who you are and what you stand for. That's what matters, Marcus said, his gaze steady and reassuring. But Clara wasn't so sure. The more she faced the negative comments, the more her confidence wavered. At a family gathering that weekend, the pressure reached a boiling point. Clara, we need to talk about your situation at work, her mother said, a concerned expression on her face. This thing with the janitor. His name is Marcus, Clara interrupted, her frustration bubbling over. Right, Marcus. It just doesn't look good. You're the principal, for heaven's sake. What are people going to think? Her mother continued, her tone rising with worry. Honestly, I don't care what they think, Clara shot back. This is my life, not theirs. Marcus is a good man, and he deserves to be treated with respect. Her mother shook her head, disbelief etched on her face. But he's a janitor. Clara, you're putting your reputation on the line for someone like him. You have to think about your future. I've thought about it, and I want to be happy. I'm tired of conforming to everyone else's expectations, Clara replied, her voice firm but trembling with emotion. As Clara stormed away from the gathering, she felt the weight of her family's disapproval bearing down on her. That night, as she lay in bed, her phone buzzed with a message from Marcus. Thinking of you. I'm proud of you for standing your ground. Let's not let the noise get to us. A small smile tugged at Clara's lips as she read his words. Maybe they could withstand the storm together. But the next day at school, the storm intensified. Clara received an email summoning her to a meeting with the school board. A wave of anxiety washed over her as she realized her colleagues had escalated their complaints, seeking to undermine her authority and relationship with Marcus. When she entered the boardroom, the atmosphere was tense. Several members of the board sat around the table, their expressions grave. Clara took a deep breath, steeling herself for what lay ahead. As the meeting began, Clara's heart raced with anticipation. The board members addressed her with concern. "Clara, we've received multiple complaints regarding your relationship with a staff member, specifically the janitor. Some feel this could reflect poorly on your leadership. I understand the concerns, but I assure you, my relationship with Marcus does not interfere with my duties as principal," Clara replied, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. "But what about the example you're setting for the students and staff?" one board member challenged. "I believe it's a positive example," Clara shot back, her frustration boiling over. "Love is love, regardless of job titles or skin color. I will not apologize for that." But deep down, Clara feared the worst. If they decided against her, her career could be in jeopardy, and the thought of losing everything she worked for felt like a punch to the gut. After the meeting, Clara left the boardroom, her heart heavy with uncertainty. As she passed by the staff lounge, she overheard two teachers whispering, "Can you believe she's dating him? It's so unprofessional. She should know better," one teacher scoffed. Clara clenched her fists, anger bubbling within her. She had fought to be a leader, a role model for her students, and now her colleagues were trying to tear her down over her choices. Later that evening, as Clara prepared for bed, she stared at the ceiling, replaying the day's events in her mind. The fight felt exhausting, but one thought remained: she couldn't let their prejudices dictate her happiness. She needed to confront the truth head-on, but the stakes were higher than ever. Would she have the strength to stand up for herself and the man she loved? The days turned into a blur as the tension at Crestview Elementary escalated. Clara felt the pressure mounting from all sides, her colleagues' whispers echoing in her mind, each snide comment feeling like a weight pulling her down. The atmosphere in the school had shifted. It was no longer just about her relationship with Marcus, but a battle for her professional integrity and identity. One afternoon, during lunch in the staff lounge, Clara sat with a few teachers, attempting to maintain a semblance of normalcy. But as soon as she sat down, she could feel the eyes of her colleagues on her. "Clara, how's your little romance with the janitor going?" Lisa asked, feigning innocence. "Still think it's a good idea?" The laughter that followed stung like a slap in the face. Clara swallowed hard, her appetite vanishing. "I think it's none of your business," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "Come on, Clara. You're a principal. This isn't a high school fling. You're setting a terrible example for the students," another teacher, Tom, chimed in, leaning back in his chair with a smug grin. "That's not true. Relationships can come in all shapes and forms, and it's about character, not job titles," Clara defended, though her confidence wavered. "Sure, but what does it say about your judgment?" Tom persisted, and Clara could feel her temper rising. "I mean, dating a janitor? What's next? Dating a student?" Clara felt the anger boiling over. "You're all being incredibly rude and ignorant. Marcus is a hardworking, dedicated man. You're judging him based on his job and his skin color, and that says far more about you than it does about me." The room fell silent, but Clara could feel the disdain radiating from her colleagues. They exchanged looks of disbelief, as if her defense of Marcus was the most shocking thing they had ever heard. That evening, after a long day filled with hostility, Clara met Marcus at their favorite cafe. As they settled into their seats, she couldn't help but voice her frustrations. "It's getting worse, Marcus. I feel like I'm fighting a losing battle here." Marcus reached across the table, placing his hand over hers. "You're not losing, Clara. You're standing up for what you believe in. That takes courage. But it shouldn't be this hard. I thought people could see beyond the surface," Clara admitted, her voice cracking slightly. Marcus sighed, his expression contemplative. "Change is never easy, especially when it comes to deep-rooted biases. But love is worth the fight. Don't let their negativity dim what you feel." Clara smiled weakly, appreciating his support, but doubts continued to swirl in her mind. The world outside their cozy cafe was filled with judgment and prejudice, and it was a harsh reminder of the battles they faced. The following day, the school board called for another meeting regarding Clara's relationship. Tension crackled in the air as she entered the room, the faces of the board members lined with skepticism. She felt like a defendant in a courtroom, her heart racing, as she prepared to defend her choices. "Clara, we need to address the complaints we've received," the board chair said, his tone serious. "Many staff members believe your relationship with Marcus is unprofessional." "I've heard that," Clara replied, her voice steady. "But I refuse to apologize for who I choose to love. My relationship does not interfere with my duties as principal." "Respectfully, Clara, this is about more than just you. It's about the reputation of the school," another board member interjected. "What kind of message does it send to the parents and the community?" "The kind of message that says love knows no boundaries," Clara shot back, her determination flaring. "This isn't just about job titles or race. It's about human connection and acceptance." The room fell silent, tension palpable. Clara felt her heartbeat echoing in her ears as she continued. "If I'm to be a role model for these kids, then I need to model acceptance and love, regardless of background. We should be promoting diversity, not shunning it." As Clara spoke, she could sense the shifting dynamics in the room. Some board members leaned in, listening intently, while others appeared unconvinced. Just as it seemed the tide might turn in her favor, the board chair raised his hand, cutting her off. "While we appreciate your passion, we also have to consider the implications. We've decided to put your position under review," he announced, and Clara's stomach dropped. "What does that mean?" she asked, dread pooling in her chest. "It means we'll be reassessing your role as principal in light of these complaints. You will be informed of our decision in the coming weeks," he replied, the finality of his words echoing in her mind. As she left the meeting, Clara felt the weight of the world on her shoulders. She had fought valiantly, but now the threat to her career loomed larger than ever. The whispers and judgments seemed insurmountable, and for the first time, Clara felt a flicker of doubt creeping in. Later that evening, Clara returned home and collapsed onto her couch, her mind racing. She wanted to reach out to Marcus, to seek comfort in his presence, but she also feared the burden of dragging him deeper into this conflict. The next day, she arrived at school, her heart heavy with uncertainty. As she passed through the hallways, she overheard snippets of conversation. "Did you hear? They might fire her," one teacher whispered. "What kind of example is that?" "A principal dating a janitor," another responded. Clara clenched her fists, anger and hurt flooding through her. They were trying to take everything from her, her career, her dignity, and the love she had found in Marcus. That afternoon, Clara found herself in her office, staring blankly at the paperwork on her desk. Just then, there was a knock on the door, and Marcus stepped in, his expression a mix of concern and determination. "Hey, I just wanted to check on you," he said, closing the door behind him. "I heard about the board meeting." Clara felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. "It's bad, Marcus. They're trying to use our relationship against me. I don't know how much longer I can fight." "Then don't fight alone," he replied, moving closer. "We're in this together, and I'm not going anywhere." Clara felt a rush of gratitude, but also fear. What if this costs you your job? I can't let that happen. Marcus shook his head, determination blazing in his eyes. I'll take that risk if it means standing by you. We deserve to be happy, no matter what anyone else thinks. In that moment, Clara realized that love was worth fighting for. Despite the looming threats and judgments, she felt a spark of hope. Together, they would face whatever came next, and she would not let fear dictate her choices any longer. The battle was far from over, but now Clara felt stronger, ready to confront the storm head-on. As the days turned into a tense waiting game, Clara knew she had to prepare for the final showdown with the school board. The review of her position loomed over her like a storm cloud, threatening to unleash its fury at any moment. Clara felt the weight of her colleagues' disdain and the pressure to conform to their expectations, but she also felt a renewed sense of resolve. One evening, Clara and Marcus met in the school gym after hours, a place where they could escape the prying eyes of their colleagues. The quiet of the empty gym felt like a sanctuary, and as they practiced basketball together, Clara found solace in Marcus's presence. "Can you believe this is where we've ended up?" Clara said, tossing the ball to him. A principal and a janitor playing basketball after hours just to avoid the rumors. Marcus laughed, catching the ball effortlessly. "At least it's a good workout. But seriously, Clara, you have to keep your head up. You've done everything you can. No matter what happens, I'll be right here with you." "I just hate feeling like I'm letting everyone down," Clara admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've worked so hard to get here, and now they want to tear me apart for being happy." "Being happy isn't something to apologize for," Marcus said, stepping closer. "You're a great principal because you care about the kids and your staff. Don't let anyone take that away from you." As the night deepened, the two of them sat on the bleachers, talking and laughing, momentarily forgetting the weight of the world outside. But the reality of the situation returned as Clara's phone buzzed with an email notification from the school board, reminding her of the meeting scheduled for the following day. "Are you ready for tomorrow?" Marcus asked, concern etched on his face. "I'm as ready as I'll ever be," Clara replied, trying to sound confident. "I just wish I could make them see that my relationship with you doesn't affect my ability to lead." "You will. Just speak from your heart. That's what matters," Marcus encouraged, squeezing her hand reassuringly. The next day, Clara arrived at the school board meeting, her heart pounding in her chest. The board members sat in a semicircle, their expressions serious as they prepared to hear her defense. Clara took a deep breath, steeling herself for the battle ahead. As she stood before the board, she could feel the weight of her colleagues' judgments pressing down on her. "Thank you for allowing me to speak today," she began, her voice steady. "I know there have been concerns about my relationship with Marcus, but I want to address why this is not just a personal issue, it's a professional one." She paused, scanning the room filled with skeptical faces. "My relationship with Marcus is built on respect, love, and understanding. It doesn't diminish my role as a principal. In fact, it enriches it. I believe in modeling acceptance and inclusivity for our students." One board member, a stern woman with glasses, interjected. "But you must understand, Clara, that this raises questions about professionalism. Parents might be concerned about how this reflects on our school." Clara felt her pulse quicken, but stood her ground. "I understand their concerns, but shouldn't we teach our students about love and acceptance? Shouldn't we encourage them to embrace diversity rather than judge others based on superficial criteria?" The board remained silent, but Clara sensed the tension in the room. "If I were to hide my relationship out of fear of judgment, what kind of message would that send? I want our students to know that they can be who they are, regardless of the obstacles in their way." As she spoke, Clara could feel a fire igniting within her. The room seemed to shift as some board members leaned forward, intrigued by her words. "I'm not asking for anyone's approval. I'm asking for the freedom to love who I choose without facing discrimination." Clara continued, her voice growing stronger. What I feel for Marcus is real, and it has nothing to do with his position. It has everything to do with who he is as a person. Just then, the board chair raised a hand, silencing the murmurs in the room. Clara, we appreciate your passion, but we need to consider all aspects. This is a serious matter, and we must reflect on how this impacts the entire school community. The tension in the room thickened as Clara felt the weight of their scrutiny. I urge you to think about the message we're sending, she implored. What example are we setting if we allow fear and prejudice to dictate our choices? Are we not supposed to be role models for the next generation? A heavy silence hung in the air, and Clara held her breath, hoping for a breakthrough. After what felt like an eternity, the board chair cleared his throat. We will take this into consideration. However, we need to make our decision based on the guidelines of the school's policies. Just as Clara thought the moment was slipping away, one board member spoke up. I'd like to propose that we allow Clara to remain as principal. Staff relationships, as long as they don't affect professionalism, should not be grounds for dismissal. After all, staff members can date one another without it being a scandal. A murmur of surprise rippled through the room, and Clara felt a rush of hope. Do we have a second for this proposal? The chair asked, glancing around the table. I second it, another board member said, and Clara's heart soared. Then it's settled. We will review our policies regarding staff relationships and clarify that it is permissible for staff to date as long as it does not interfere with their professional responsibilities, the chair announced. Clara's breath caught in her throat as a wave of relief washed over her. She could hardly believe what she was hearing. The storm that had loomed over her was beginning to dissipate. As she left the meeting room, she spotted Marcus waiting outside, his eyes filled with concern. How did it go? He asked, stepping forward. I think I'm still the principal, Clara said, a mixture of disbelief and joy filling her voice. Marcus wrapped his arms around her, lifting her off the ground in a joyous embrace. I knew you could do it. You fought for what you believe in, and that's what matters. I couldn't have done it without you, Clara replied, her voice trembling with emotion. You showed me what it means to stand up for love and acceptance. As they walked out of the school together, hand in hand, Clara felt a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't just a victory for her, it was a step forward for everyone who had ever faced discrimination or prejudice. The journey had been challenging, but Clara knew she would continue to fight against the biases that existed, both within the school and in society at large. With Marcus by her side, she felt empowered to lead with compassion, to promote acceptance, and to inspire change. As they stepped into the sunlight, Clara realized that love, true love, was worth every battle fought, and together, they would continue to break down barriers, forging a path towards a brighter, more inclusive future. Part 5. Resolution and Twist. In the weeks following the board's decision, Clara felt a renewed sense of purpose as she embraced her role as principal with vigor and confidence. The support from the board had not only reaffirmed her position, but had also energized her commitment to creating a more inclusive environment for both staff and students at Crestview Elementary. She and Marcus began to openly share their relationship with the school community, attending school events together and demonstrating that love transcends societal boundaries. Clara even initiated a new program aimed at promoting diversity and inclusion, inviting speakers from various backgrounds to share their experiences with students and staff alike. However, even as she flourished in her role, the whispers among some of her colleagues continued, albeit more muted. Clara often found herself having to confront snide remarks in the staff lounge, but she did so with grace. One afternoon, while preparing for an upcoming diversity event, Clara overheard two teachers, Lisa and Tom, speaking in hushed tones. "Can you believe she's still with him? It's like she's trying to make a statement or something," Lisa scoffed, her tone dripping with disdain. Tom replied, I just don't understand how she can think this is appropriate. A principal should know better." Clara's heart sank at their words, but she stood tall, deciding to address their comments directly. "Excuse me, but I couldn't help but overhear your conversation," she said, walking toward them. "I'm proud of my relationship with Marcus. It's not a statement, it's love. And love shouldn't be judged based on race or occupation." Lisa rolled her eyes, crossing her arms defensively. "You know that love doesn't change the facts, Clara. You're a role model. What kind of example are you setting?" "The kind that teaches acceptance, empathy, and understanding," Clara replied firmly. "If we want our students to grow into compassionate individuals, we need to show them what that looks like in our own lives." Tom opened his mouth to argue, but Clara held up a hand. "You both may not agree with my choices, but I hope one day you'll reflect on your judgments and see that they are rooted in biases. It's time we moved past them." As she walked away, Clara felt a mixture of anger and empowerment. Confronting those who judged her was exhausting, but necessary. She was determined to create an environment where diversity was celebrated, not shunned. As the diversity event approached, Clara felt a surge of excitement and apprehension. The keynote speaker was a well-respected activist known for his work in promoting racial equality. Clara had invited Marcus to speak as well, and she hoped the two would share a powerful message with the audience. On the night of the event, the auditorium buzzed with energy. Parents, students, and faculty filled the seats, eager to hear the speakers. Clara stood at the podium, her heart racing as she welcomed everyone. "Thank you all for being here tonight," Clara began, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. "This evening is about celebrating our differences and recognizing the strength that comes from diversity." As Clara introduced the speakers, she felt a swell of pride as Marcus stepped onto the stage. He was confident and composed, his presence commanding the room. He spoke passionately about the importance of understanding and embracing one another, regardless of background. After Marcus finished, Clara joined him on stage for a Q&A session. The questions from the audience flowed freely, and Clara felt the atmosphere shift to one of acceptance and curiosity. Just as the event was wrapping up, a hand shot up from the back of the auditorium. A mother stood up, her face flushed. "I don't understand why you, Clara, are dating someone like Marcus. Isn't it just a bad example for our kids?" The room fell silent, all eyes on Clara. She felt the heat rising in her cheeks, but remained composed. "What does it mean to be a bad example?" she asked, her voice steady. "To love someone who makes you happy. To model acceptance instead of fear. If that's the case, then I proudly stand as a bad example." A murmur rippled through the audience, and Clara could sense a shift in perception. She continued, "Love is not defined by race or occupation. It's about who you are as a person and how you treat others. That's the example I want to set for our children." As the audience erupted into applause, Clara felt a wave of relief wash over her. She had taken a stand, not just for herself, but for everyone who felt marginalized or judged. The night ended on a high note, and as Clara and Marcus left the auditorium, they were greeted with congratulations and support from parents and students alike. Clara felt the weight of judgment lifting, replaced by a sense of community and acceptance. In the weeks that followed, Clara's relationship with Marcus continued to blossom, and so did the culture at Crestview Elementary. More students engaged in discussions about diversity, and the staff became more supportive of one another. But just when Clara thought the storm had passed, an unexpected twist occurred. One afternoon, as Clara was organizing files in her office, she received a call from the district superintendent. "Clara, I'm calling to inform you that we've decided to conduct an investigation regarding the complaints against you," the superintendent said, his tone serious. "What complaints?" "The board approved my position and my relationship," Clara replied, her heart racing. It seems there's been a new wave of complaints from several parents, citing that your personal relationship affects your ability to lead the school, he explained. Clara felt her stomach drop. But those complaints were addressed. We can't keep going through this cycle. Nevertheless, we must take this seriously. I'll be in touch with the details, he said before hanging up. In a state of disbelief, Clara leaned back in her chair, frustration boiling inside her. She couldn't believe they were reopening the investigation. Just when things were finally improving, the past threatened to rear its ugly head once more. Determined not to let this derail her, Clara called Marcus to share the news. "Clara, don't let this get to you. You've overcome so much already. We'll face this together," he reassured her. As Clara listened to his voice, she felt a sense of strength return. Together, they would stand against the prejudices that sought to undermine their love and her role as principal. With the support of the community behind her and Marcus by her side, Clara prepared to face yet another challenge. She would not let the voices of hatred win. It was time to turn the tide once more, this time with the strength of love, acceptance, and an unwavering commitment to breaking down barriers once and for all. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more captivating narratives like this, don't forget to subscribe. We'd love to keep you updated on our latest content. Also, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We can't wait to hear from you and connect with our global community. Your support means the world to us.